You did not stumble here by accident. There are no accidents when it comes to the moments that matter. There are only invisible hands, patient and precise, arranging the 10,000 small details of a life so that a specific message arrives in front of a specific person at the exact moment when that person is ready to receive it. You are that person. This is that moment. And the message waiting for you inside this video has been held in reserve. Not for everyone, not for anyone who happens to scroll past, but for you, for the frequency of who you specifically are, for the exact shape of what you have been carrying and surviving and quietly refusing to let break you. You have survived 100% of your bad days. Let that land. Every single day that felt unsurvivable, you survived it. Every morning after a night that felt endless, you woke up and you kept going. Not because you always felt strong, not because you always felt certain, because there was a hand holding yours that you could not always see, that you did not always feel, but that never once released its grip. That hand is God's. Today, through one of 3 crystal spheres, that hand is going to speak to you directly. Before you choose, settle into your body for a moment. Breathe in slowly and feel your chest rise. Let the breath go without forcing it, and feel the small release that follows. You are here. You are held. You are safe enough to receive what is coming. 3 spheres are before you. Green sphere holds the light of new beginnings after long endurance. It calls to those who have been waiting in the dark for permission to hope again. Blue sphere carries the deep, steady light of truth returning after confusion. It calls to those who have lost trust in their own knowing. The red sphere burns with the light of reclaimed strength. It calls to those whose fire was almost put out by people who could not stand its warmth. Do not think your way into a choice. Let something quieter than thought decide. Look at the 3 spheres, breathe, and notice which one holds your eyes a half second longer than the others. Write your color in the comments, green, blue, or red, and let the universe record your choice. Timestamps are in the description. Your message begins now, Sage. The green sphere. You chose green, and I want you to understand what that means about where you are right now, because it is not an accident, and it is not random. The green sphere calls specifically to those who have been in a long season of endurance, who have been doing the invisible work of surviving while the world around them continued as if nothing was finally, genuinely, about to change. That wondering is not wishful thinking. That wondering is perception. You are sensing something real. And the fact that you are here, in front of this message, on this particular day, is the universe confirming what your own knowing has been quietly telling you for weeks now. But before we talk about what is coming, I need to talk about what you have already been through, because you have been moving too quickly past it, converting it into lessons and forward motion before it has been properly honored, the way people who are strong tend to do, turning everything into productivity before the grief of it has been allowed to simply be grief. You have had a difficult time, genuinely difficult time, not the kind that is easy to explain to people who have not lived it, but the kind that settles into the body over months and years, that changes the specific quality of your resting face, that makes it harder than it used to be to feel the simple, uncomplicated joy of being alive without the shadow of everything you have managed underneath it. I was there in the specific moments that cost the most. I was there when you extended yourself, your time, your money, your emotional reserves, the specific quality of your care that is not common and is not replaceable. To someone who received all of it, and then behaved as if it were their right to receive it, as if your generosity were simply a feature of the landscape rather than a conscious and costly choice you made repeatedly on their behalf. I was there when the disappointment of that landed, and when you did what you always do with disappointment, which is absorb it quietly, revise your expectations downward, and continue. I was there on the night when the weight of all the quiet absorbing finally felt like too much, when you were alone with it, in a way that had nothing to do with whether other people were physically present. And when the thought arrived that maybe the efforts were not worth it, and maybe nothing was going to change, and maybe this particular version of your life was simply what your life was going to continue to be, that thought was not truth. That thought was exhaustion speaking in truth's voice, which is the cruelest thing exhaustion does. The difference between a lie that knows it is a lie and a lie dressed in the language of realism is that the second one is much harder to dismiss, because it arrives with all the weight of your actual experience behind it, because it has receipts, because it can point to the specific disappointments and say, "See, this is not pessimism. This is just pattern recognition." Pattern recognition without the longer view is not wisdom. It is myopia. And the longer view, the one I have, and you are only beginning to access, tells an entirely different story about where the pattern is actually going. Let me tell you the story of a gardener who almost gave up in the wrong season. This gardener had planted a particular variety of seed. Not the easy kind. Not the kind that sprouts in a week and produces something recognizable quickly, but the deep-rooting kind, the patient kind, the kind that requires a full cycle of cold before it can germinate at all. She had planted these seeds in the autumn, which was the right time to plant them, and she had watered them through the winter, which was the right thing to do, and she had waited through months of frozen ground with no visible evidence that anything she had done had made any difference at all. By the end of the second winter, she had nearly convinced herself that the seeds were dead, that something had gone wrong in the soil or in the planting, that she had misread the instructions and done it incorrectly, and that the sensible thing to do was to dig them up and try something else. She had even taken the shovel out one morning, early, before the day fully started, and stood over the bed where the seeds were buried and held the shovel in her hands for a long time. She did not dig. She put the shovel away, not because she was certain anything was alive beneath the surface, but because something in her was not ready to know for sure that it wasn't. That not readiness was not weakness. That not readiness was wisdom her conscious mind had not yet caught up to. 3 weeks later, the first green appeared. Not one shoot. Dozens of them, all at once, as if they had been waiting together for the conditions to become exactly right before they committed to becoming visible. You are the gardener, and you are the garden both. The seeds you have planted through years of effort and care and patient tending are not dead. They have been in a cycle that required the cold. They have been building underground a root system that the surface gave no indication of. Green sphere is not showing you the beginning of the growth. It is showing you the threshold before the emergence, the moment right before the dozens of shoots appear all at once. The 3 weeks before what you nearly gave up on reveals itself to have been alive the entire time. Now I need to tell you something specific about your present circumstances that requires your honest attention. Something I would not tell you if I did not believe you were ready to hear it, without it causing unnecessary pain. There is a person in your current orbit, someone you have been generous toward, someone whose difficulties you have taken seriously and invested in solving, who has been taking more from you than they have acknowledged, and who has been doing something specific with the information you share with them that has not been serving your interests. They are not a villain in a simple story. They are a person who has learned, at some point in their own life, that the way to feel safe is to position themselves slightly above the people around them. And they have been, without necessarily being fully conscious of it, using the things you tell them in confidence to manage their own sense of position. They share what you share. They frame your struggles in ways that make those struggles sound less temporary than they are. They present your vulnerability, in rooms you are not in, as your permanent state, rather than as a moment you are passing through. You have sensed this. You have not let yourself fully name it, because naming it would require a reckoning with a relationship you have invested in and do not want to lose, and because you are someone who defaults toward charitable interpretation. You do not need to confront this person. You do not need to announce anything or engineer any kind of resolution. What you need to do is become significantly more selective about what you share and with whom you share it, and specifically to stop giving this person access to the vulnerable and in-progress parts of your life. Let them see only what is already complete. Let them know about the results after they have arrived, not about the hopes before they have been confirmed. This is not coldness. This is the intelligence of someone who has finally decided to protect the seeds while they are still underground, where they are most fragile and most in need of protection. Accountability for what this person has done is not yours to arrange. The universe manages that accounting with a precision that does not require your participation, and the management is already in motion. What you will observe, if you are patient and paying attention, is that this person will eventually experience a situation that mirrors back to them exactly what they have done, not as punishment that you wished on them, but as the natural and inevitable consequence of a pattern that creates its own conclusion. Your task is only to be standing clearly in your own life when that happens, neither gloating nor grieving, simply present in the forward motion of your own story. What is coming for you? And I want you to feel this physically as I describe it. Want you to feel the weight leaving your shoulders incrementally as you take it in, is a period of clarification and arrival that is unlike anything you have experienced in the recent years. The financial situation that has been uncertain or constrained is going to shift within the next 3 to 4 weeks in a way that feels less like luck and more like a long-delayed correction, like something finally being paid back that was owed. Watch for a conversation, an email, or a notification that arrives on a day when you were not expecting anything particularly significant. The universe tends to deliver its best news on ordinary Tuesdays, in the middle of afternoons, when the mind is not braced for impact. A relationship that has been at a difficult angle, whether that is a strain with someone you love, or an absence of connection, where you have been wanting presence, or an uncertainty about whether something is real, is going to resolve into something clearer and more honest than it has been. This resolution will require one honest conversation that you have been postponing because the postponing has felt safer. Conversation is going to feel, once you have had it, like the removal of a weight you forgot you were carrying because you had been carrying it for so long that it became part of what you thought was simply your natural posture. It is not your natural posture. Your natural posture is upright and open. You will feel it when the weight comes off. Place your hand on your heart right now, in whatever space you are in, and breathe slowly into the warmth there. That warmth is not yours alone. It is the warmth of a hand that has been holding yours through every single day of the winter you have been surviving. Say quietly, in the full privacy of your own knowing, I trust the growth I cannot yet see. I am the gardener who did not dig up the seeds. What is mine is alive beneath the surface, and it is coming. Write in the comments, green, or simply, I am ready to bloom. Green sphere chose you because the emergence is at hand, and what is about to break through the surface was worth every day of cold that made it possible. Sage 2. The blue sphere. You chose blue, and the first thing I want you to know about that choice is what it reveals about the particular quality of what you have been living through. Because the blue sphere does not call to people who are struggling in obvious ways, in ways that are easy to point to and explain and receive support for, but to people who are struggling, who is lost. Somewhere is true. You have been confused. Not about everything, not in a global, disorienting way, but about specific things that matter enormously. Whether certain relationships are what they appear to be, whether the direction you have been moving in is the right one, whether what you're feeling in response to your circumstances is accurate perception, or whether it is distortion created by some flaw in your own emotional wiring. You have been second-guessing yourself with a frequency and a ferocity that has been exhausting, and the exhaustion itself has made the second-guessing worse, because the tired mind cannot trust its own conclusions. Here is what I need to tell you first, before anything else. Your perception is not broken. The thing you have sensed about the situation you keep returning to. You are right. The thing you have felt about the person you keep making excuses for. You are right about that too. The confusion has not been coming from inside you. It has been coming from outside you, from the specific pressure of circumstances and people that have been, in ways both subtle and sustained, making you doubt the reliability of your own interior knowing. There is a name for this kind of pressure, and the name is less important than the recognition. You have been in an environment that rewards your uncertainty and punishes your clarity, and your mind, which is adaptive and intelligent, has learned to produce more of what is rewarded and less of what is punished. The result has been a growing distance between what you actually perceive and what you allow yourself to believe you perceive. That distance is closing today. This message is part of how it closes. I was with you in the specific conversations where the closing of the distance first began, where you said something true, or asked something honest, or named something you had observed, and the response from the person you were speaking to was a kind of calm, authoritative redirection that left you holding your own experience in your hands and wondering what was wrong with it. Not an angry redirection, not a defensive one, the most skillful kind, which is the kind that sounds like wisdom, that uses language like perspective and projection, and not seeing the full picture, that frames your clarity as evidence of your limitation, rather than as the genuine perception it was. You walked away from those conversations smaller than you entered them, and because the person delivering the redirection seemed so certain, and because certainty has a kind of gravity that self-doubt cannot resist, you orbited their version of reality for longer than your own knowing wanted you to. I watched you in the hours after those conversations. I watched you go back over what had been said, turning it in your mind, looking for the flaw in your own perception that must have been there since the other person seemed so sure. I watched the way the uncertainty settled into you not as a conclusion, but as a chronic low-grade noise, always present, always costing something, always making it slightly harder to act decisively on your own behalf, because acting decisively requires trusting your own reading of the situation, and your reading had been called into question too many times. I watched the way you became, incrementally, and without any single dramatic turning point, someone who asks for more external confirmation before doing things that used to feel natural and uncomplicated, someone who checks themselves more thoroughly and more anxiously than the situation warrants, someone who has started to mistake the noise of imposed self-doubt for the voice of genuine wisdom. Those are not the same thing. Real wisdom feels like settling. It feels like the particular quiet of something finally clicking into place. It does not feel like the ongoing noise you have been living with. The noise is not yours. It was installed, and it can be uninstalled. And the process of uninstalling it begins with understanding that the person who installed it had reasons that had nothing to do with your actual welfare. Let me tell you about clear water and what happens when someone disturbs it deliberately, because the blue sphere is water, and you are water, and this story is yours. There is a quality in still water that has always been known by people who pay attention to the natural world, the quality of perfect transparency, of showing exactly what is beneath its surface without addition or distortion, of reflecting exactly what stands above it without flattery or diminishment. Still water is a mirror that has no agenda. It shows what is there. This quality has always made certain people uncomfortable, specifically people who have things to hide, specifically people whose sense of safety depends on others not seeing them too clearly. And so there is an old practice in communities that feared the truth-telling quality of still water, of throwing stones into the pool before anyone could look into it. Not large stones, small ones, placed carefully, thrown one at a time, each one creating just enough disturbance to render the surface unreliable, not broken, not destroyed, just disturbed enough that what someone sees when they look into it is confusion rather than clarity. You are the pool, and someone has been throwing small stones, not rocks. They would have been obvious, would have produced a disruption too large to deny. Small, careful, patient stones, one at a time, over a long enough period that the surface has not been allowed to return fully to stillness before the next one arrives. The result is that you have begun to believe that the confusion is the natural state of the water, that you are fundamentally a confused person. That clarity is something you have to work very hard to achieve rather than something that is your default and would return immediately if the stones simply stopped. The stones are going to stop. And when they do, the water will clear on its own without any effort from you, because stillness is its nature and always has been. Now the specific warning that this sphere carries for you, the thing I need to tell you plainly so that you have the information you need to move forward without being ambushed by something you could have anticipated. There is a decision being pushed towards you in a timeline that feels slightly accelerated, with an urgency that has been manufactured by someone who benefits from your deciding before you have had adequate time to think. This may appear as an opportunity, professional, financial, relational, that presents itself with a window that seems to be closing. Framing around this opportunity has been carefully constructed to engage your specific form of anxiety, the form that says, if I do not move now, I will have missed the moment, and the moment will not come again. That framing is not accurate. The real things in your life do not close permanently, because you needed 2 additional weeks to make a clear-headed choice. What closes permanently because you pause is not something that was built on a foundation solid enough to hold you. Real opportunities wait for your genuine readiness, because they are offered by people who want you in them fully, not people who need you inside a structure before you have examined it from the outside. Pause. Explicitly, and without apology, pause. Say that you need more time and watch what the response to that request reveals. The response will tell you everything you need to know about whether what is being offered is genuinely for your benefit or primarily for someone else's. What is actually coming for you, past this moment of pausing, past this moment of deciding on your own terms, is a clarity so complete and so restful that it will feel almost unfamiliar, because you have been living without it for long enough that you have partially forgotten what it feels like to simply know what is true without laboring for the knowing. Specific situation that has been occupying significant mental and emotional real estate. Something you return to involuntarily. Something that sits at the back of every other thing you try to focus on, is going to resolve. And it is going to resolve in a way that is so clean and so final that the space it currently occupies will become genuinely available for something new. That space is not small. You will be surprised, when it opens, by how much room it contains, and by how immediately something meaningful begins to fill it. The meaningful thing may be a person, someone who communicates in a way that is direct and consistent, where what they say and what they do produce the same information, where you do not have to interpret or wonder or decode, where the simple act of being in conversation with them is restful, because nothing is hidden and nothing requires translation. You have not had enough of this in your recent life, and you have begun, without quite naming it, to believe that it is rarer than it is. It is not rare. It is simply absent from your current configuration, and the current configuration is changing. Feel as you sit with this, the sensation of your shoulders dropping slightly, the sensation of a breath going to a depth it has not been reaching recently, the sensation of something in your chest that has been braced and tight loosening by a few degrees, not fully, not yet, but perceptibly, in a way that your body recognizes as the beginning of a real release. That is the still water returning. That is your natural state asserting itself. That is God's hand, which has been holding yours through every day of the disturbance, finally beginning to lead you back to the shore. Say, with the full weight of your intention behind it, my clarity is not broken. My perception is not wrong. I release the noise that was never mine, and I return, without effort, to the still and truthful knowing that has always been my nature. Write in the comments. Blue, just simply, I trust what I know. Blue sphere found you because the water was ready to clear, and what you will see in it, once the stones stop and the surface settles, will show you a reflection so honest and so beautiful that you will wonder how you ever doubted it. Sage 3. The red sphere. You chose red, and I want to begin by telling you what the red sphere has always known about the person who reaches for it, because there is something specific in you that this color recognizes, something that most of the people in your life have benefited from enormously without fully understanding that it exists or what it costs to maintain. The red sphere calls to those who have fire, not the easy, decorative, dinner party kind of fire, the real kind, the kind that has sustained you through circumstances that should have extinguished it, the kind that has driven you to keep going and keep caring and keep investing yourself in things and people and futures when the rational case for stopping was overwhelming. You have that fire. You have always had it. And the reason you are here today, in front of this message, is that something or someone has spent a significant amount of time and energy trying to put it out. And it is time. Past time. Well past time. For that to stop. Let me sit with you first in the specific quality of what it feels like to be someone with your particular kind of fire, in a world that is not always built to receive it. You feel things at a depth that other people do not always match. You invest in things at a level of commitment that other people do not always reciprocate. You love when you love, with the kind of completeness that leaves you genuinely exposed, not because you are naive, or because you have not learned that exposure carries risk, but because something in you simply cannot do it halfway. Halfway has never felt like loving to you. Halfway has always felt like a rehearsal for something that never becomes real. And so you have gone all the way, in relationships, and in work, and in everything you choose to care about. And you have felt, fully, without the insulating distance that more self-protective people maintain, both the heights that come with that completeness and the depths that come with it when something that received your complete investment turns out not to have deserved it. And some things have not deserved it. I want to name that plainly because I think you have been too generous for too long with the benefit of the doubt you extend to the people and situations that have disappointed you. And the generosity of your doubt benefiting has cost you something I want to account for specifically. It has cost you time. Years of it, in some cases, years that were spent maintaining hope in directions that were not going to produce what you were hoping for. Years that were organized around a future that the other party in the arrangement had, in some cases, already quietly decided was not going to happen. It has cost you energy. The specific, irreplaceable, slow-burning kind of energy that people with real fire have. The kind that is not infinitely renewable, the kind that requires genuine rest and genuine reciprocity to replenish, and that has been drawn down over the recent period to a level lower than you have acknowledged even to yourself. And it has cost you, perhaps most significantly, the experience of your own fire at full strength, because you have been using so much of its heat to sustain things outside yourself that the interior, the place where the fire actually lives, has been running cooler than it is meant to run. I was with you on the nights when you felt the coldness of that reduced interior flame. I was there when you lay in the dark and tried to locate the feeling of hope or excitement, or simply wanting. The simple, uncomplicated wanting of something for yourself, something good, something that had your name on it, and found instead a kind of blankness that frightened you because it was so unlike who you know yourself to be. I was there when you got up the next morning and performed the ordinary courage of continuing without telling anyone how cold it had felt in there the night before. I was there when you made yourself useful to someone who needed your fire without once considering whether your fire needed something too. I was there in all of it, holding your hand through all of it. And I need you to know that what I saw on those nights was not a person losing their fire. It was a person whose fire was being misdirected. aimed at sources that absorbed it without reflecting any of it back, and who was experiencing not the extinction of the fire, but the natural consequence of giving heat to things that do not hold warmth. Let me tell you about the nature of fire itself, because you need to understand what you actually are before you can understand what has been done to it and what is about to happen next. Fire does not diminish by burning. This is the counterintuitive truth about fire that most people never learn. A fire that is allowed to burn freely, in the right conditions, in the presence of the right fuel, does not exhaust itself. It grows. The size of a fire is not determined by how much energy it started with, but by the conditions it is given. A single match in an open field with dry grass and wind can become something that covers miles. The same match in a sealed container of wet material will go out in seconds, not because the match was insufficient, but because the conditions made the burning impossible. You have been in sealed containers. You have been in environments, relationships, professional situations, personal dynamics that were wet and enclosed, and that consumed your heat without allowing you to burn. And you have been blaming the match. The match is not the problem. The match was and is and will remain extraordinary. What is changing is the container. Now I need to tell you something about the current situation that you need to hear before you take your next significant step. Because God does not only hold your hand through the difficult days, God also holds it away from the edges you cannot always see from where you are standing. There is someone in your life right now who presents as a supporter, but who has a specific and significant investment in you not succeeding at the thing you most want to succeed at, because your success in that area would highlight an absence in their own life that they are not ready to confront. This person is not aware of the full extent of what they are doing. They have constructed a narrative, mostly internal, that frames their behavior as concern for you, as realism, as the kind of honest friendship that tells you the difficult truths that other people are too kind to say. But the difficult truths they tell you are consistently and specifically related to your chances of achieving the things you want most, and the telling of them has a quality of relief to it, a micro-expression of satisfaction when you receive their assessment and seem discouraged, that you have noticed without letting yourself fully interpret. You are not imagining this. The interpretation you have been sitting on is correct. You do not need to address this person directly. Direct address is not what this situation calls for, because direct address would give them information about how clearly you see them that they would immediately use to recalibrate their approach and continue what they are doing with greater subtlety. What this situation calls for is a strategic and complete withdrawal of the specific type of information they have been using, a ceasing of the practice of sharing your aspirations, your plans, your progressing work with someone who has been using that information to stay close to both you and your potential failure. Share your victories after they are victories. Share your completions after they are complete. Give this person nothing to manage and watch how quickly the warmth in the friendship changes temperature when there is nothing to feed on. The accountability is already in motion. The universe has been keeping the full accounting and the balance is not in this person's favor. And the correction of that balance will arrive in their life in a form that is specific to what they have been doing. And you will know when it happens because you will feel something you did not expect to feel. Not satisfaction, but a quiet and definitive release from any remaining hope that they were something other than what they have shown themselves to be. What is coming for you in the immediate future, within the next 3 to 5 weeks, in the period that begins right now, today, with this message and this moment of clarity, is a direct and unmistakable experience of your own fire at its actual strength. Something is going to happen that puts you in circumstances where you are required to bring your full capacity to bear. And when you do, when you stop managing the flame and simply let it be what it is, the result is going to be something you did not fully believe was possible for you. Not because you have ever lacked the capacity. The capacity has always been there. But because you have not been in the right conditions, and the right conditions are assembling around you right now with a speed and completeness that would surprise you if you could see the whole picture from the outside. Financial shift is part of what is coming. and it is coming through a channel connected to your fire, connected to the specific thing you do when you are being most completely yourself, when the fire is burning freely, rather than being managed for the comfort of containers that were too small. Shift will not announce itself as a shift at the moment of its beginning. It will feel, initially, like a small and almost ordinary forward movement. But that movement will compound in a way that the previous seasons of your life have not compounded, because the compounding requires the right conditions, and the conditions are finally right. Put your hand somewhere you can feel your own pulse, your wrist, your throat, the side of your neck, and feel the steady, persistent, unconditioned beat of a life that has been held through every single hard day by a hand you could not always see, but that has never, not once, loosened its grip on you. That is your fire's heartbeat. That is God in you, keeping the flame alive through every container that tried to seal it, every person that tried to manage it, every version of circumstances that made burning seem impossible. Say this in the fullness of what you mean it. I am not too much. My fire was never the problem. I open my hands, and I let it burn at its actual size, and I trust that everything built for me was designed to receive it at full strength. Write in the comments, red. Simply, I reclaim my fire. The red sphere has been waiting for you specifically, for this moment of readiness specifically, because the fire you were given is not ordinary, and it was not given to be managed in small containers for the rest of your life. God held your hand through every day that tried to extinguish it. And now, in these coming weeks, you are going to finally understand what it was being held for.